Hi guys. So Unit 8, I gotta tell you, a lot of teachers don't like teaching this chapter, but I like it. I think it's really cool. It's about emotions, drives, and motives. Now, emotions are like things that you feel, and drives are like primary physiological drives, like eating and drinking and sleeping, right? Those are actual major drives. Hey, here's a fun question. What brain part is in charge of your drives? And it begins with an H. Do you know the answer? Hypothalamus, you got it. And motives are like things that motivate you. So the chapter is divided into A and B, and you'll see why, because it's kind of interesting how they kind of section it off in the Myers textbook. Remember, the Myers textbook is available online with a PDF if you don't have it like on hand, like if you're at somebody else's house or, whatever. So it's always on the drop down tab what you need. Okay, let's begin with motives. There's four motivational concepts, and the first one's called instinct theory. Perhaps that we do things because they're an instinct. Here's an example. If you touch a baby on their cheek, they will turn towards whatever is touching them like a binky, a pacifier, right? Or like a bottle. You can go right here and they will turn, latch, and they'll suck vigorously. And this is how they get their nutrition. This is a reflex called the rooting reflex. And then when they're actually eating, it's called the sucking reflex. Everyone is born with this reflex. That is instinct theory, that we instinctively do things to help us survive. That's one motivational concept, that perhaps some of the things that you do, and we're talking about everything that you do, the fact that you are nice, the fact that you laugh, the fact that you get angry or that you're fearful, all these things might be kind of like instinctual for the human to do. So that's number one. Number two is called drive reduction theory. I'm going to use my marker right here. Let's pretend you're sleeping, right? And you wake up in the middle of the night because you're so thirsty. That is your need for water, right? And it could wake you up. Like in the middle of the night, you're so parched, you're thirsty. And then you go seek out the water, and that reduces your drive. Drive reduction theory says, right, you have a need, right? You have something that you need, so your body goes out and finds it or gets it. You're hungry, right? What gives you the idea that you're hungry? What do you feel in your stomach? You feel like hunger pain, right? Like hunger pangs. And what happens to you? You go to the refrigerator and you go check out, what's there. And sometimes we go to the refrigerator when we're not hungry. Do you guys do that too? Or am I the only one that does that? But that's drive reduction theory. You need something and then you go out to reduce the drive. And then the third motivational concept is called arousal theory. Arousal theory says that, we need to do things so that we're not bored. And we're motivated by optimal levels of arousal. Some people need more stimulation than other people. Are you one of those people that not only have to join a club, but you have to be like the leader of the club? If that's you, you need higher arousal, or you need more stimulation to keep you interested. Do you take challenging courses because you like the challenge and you just don't want to be bored? Maybe that's why you're taking AP, right? That's arousal theory. Everybody's different. Some people like to do like dangerous stuff, like, I don't know, like ATV riding without a helmet is very dangerous. But some people have that like adrenaline need. Are you one of those people? If so, guess what? You might have, you might need more stimulation than somebody else. I don't have the need to do dangerous things. I don't like doing dangerous things. That to me is high arousal, too high for me. Are you one of those people that get things done like at the last minute? Like your teacher gives you a whole month to do like a project and you do it like the night before it's due and you rock it? Are you one of those? I'm not. When a teacher gives me something to do, I do it early because otherwise I become an anxious mess. Here's the key to life here for number 3, arousal theory. You have to figure yourself out. Are you a person that can work well under pressure, right? that means that you can handle high arousal. But if you're like me, you can't handle high arousal or too high of a stimulating kind of environment, because then you kind of fall apart. You might be too anxious. And so my performance is not optimal at those levels. I like a nice moderate level of arousal. And by the way, most people are in that moderate range. Too high, gets uncomfortable. Too low, not enough, like you're kind of bored. And then the last one's the hierarchy of needs. We're going to learn about the hierarchy of needs next. But it's a famous pyramid triangle by Abraham Maslow. And this hierarchy of needs has been around for a long time. You might have seen it before you ever even entered this class. Let's see. This is the hierarchy of needs. Now, does it look familiar? It was done by Abraham Maslow. And basically he said, now he's a humanist, and he believes that all people are born what? Humanists all think all people are born what? They're born good, and they're born with all this potential. And Maslow said, in order for you to reach your highest potential, and we're going to call that highest potential up here, right? Self-actualization or self-transcendence, which is the latest. If you want to be the best you can be, you have to kind of follow these steps or climb up the ladder of the hierarchy. First, you need your physiological needs met. That means you need the basics, guys. You need to eat. You need to be able to have food and shelter, clothing, the normal stuff, things that are survival things. Next, you need to feel safe. Do you know that you're having dinner tonight? Is that even a question? Do you know where you're going to sleep tonight? Or how about the end of the week or the end of the month? It's really hard if you don't feel safe. Safety and security needs are really, really important. And that's what that stability is for. Maslow said, if you don't have these basic two needs met down here in the hierarchy, it's going to be really hard to climb up this ladder this way. And the next step in the ladder right here is called love and belonging. Do you have at least a friend, one friend that you can call at any time, no matter what, someone that you could talk to and just kind of share? It could be a family member. Is there a person that's there for you? And it all has to be as one. You don't have to be Miss Popularity or Mr. Popularity and have 1,000 friends. Like, there's a lot of us that don't have 1,000 friends, but we have a couple of close key friends that we keep very close and near and dear to our heart because, again, they make us feel good, which leads to the next step in the hierarchy, self-esteem, right? Do you feel good about yourself? Are you confident? Like, when you think of your future and goals that you have, do you believe you can actually reach them? If you said yes to that question, that means you have pretty good self-esteem. What's that inner talk happening in your head? Self-esteem is brought to you by love and belonging. If you feel like you click and you have someone there for you, it really does help your self-esteem. And then last but not least, you have self-actualization. This is the best you can be. This is like, imagine yourself being, your version of perfect, right? This is you. This is you being self-actualized, says Abraham Maslow. And then even beyond that is called self-transcendence. That was the last of the hierarchy that came later on with Maslow. He said, this is beyond yourself. You're not thinking of yourself anymore. You're thinking of others and the welfare of others. And guess what, you guys? There's no age range for this. There's some people that are 15 years old and they could be self-actualized. There's some 40-year-olds out there that are not self-actualized. This is not based on your age. It's more based on your state of mind. Now, can you be impoverished and still be self-actualized? Sure, it is possible to not have those physiological needs and become the best you that you can be under those dire circumstances. Some humanists would argue that is possible, although Abraham Maslow said that it is customary to kind of go up the hierarchy this way in order to reach the best you that you can be. Now, can you fall off the hierarchy and fall down because of maybe bad things happening to you? Yes. But the good news is that you can climb back up and you can still be the best that you can be. So, this is the famous hierarchy of needs. Does it look familiar? Does it look familiar? Okay, if you want to see a hierarchy of needs comparison to a Disney movie, see the above. It's right here on the upper left-hand side, right? Go to this YouTube, or you can just Google hierarchy of needs on Up, and it compares the two, the hierarchy of needs with the Disney movie. Okay, so in this part of the textbook, they talk about the physiology of hunger. And we're also going to be talking about the psychology of hunger. Remember, physiology is your body, psychology is your mind. And there's a lot of both involved with the act of eating. But the physiology of hunger goes back to the hypothalamus. Remember, that's in charge of your drives. That's one of the first things I asked you when I started this, right? The physiology of hunger. The physiology of hunger starts with the hypothalamus, and you got two parts of the hypothalamus, the ventromedial and the lateral. The ventromedial, I want you to think of the V, right? The V in ventromedial. Doesn't it look like a slice of pizza? I'm giving you a mnemonic device here. Doesn't it look like a slice of pizza? Yeah. I want you to pretend you ate the slice of pizza and you're full, and think of the ventromedial that way. The ventromedial hypothalamus gives you the feeling that you're full. It gives you the feeling of satisfaction. Here's another mnemonic device. Very minute hunger with that letter V. Very minute hunger. You don't feel hungry because you are full. And it's a signal that's sent to you from your stomach to your brain. And when the ventromedial is damaged, you know that you don't feel full, and you'll eat and you'll eat and you'll eat. It's been done to rats. They damage the ventromedial part of the hypothalamus, and the rats will not stop eating and they die. Yes, quite tragic. Now the next one is the lateral hypothalamus. L for lateral. I want you to think of large hunger. Mnemonic device that works. L, large hunger. This part of the hypothalamus makes you feel hungry. It initiates that hunger feeling that makes you go to the refrigerator and go get a snack because you're starving. That's the lateral hypothalamus. So these are some good mnemonic devices, guys. V, ventromedial, eat the pizza, I'm full. L, lateral, means large hunger, I'm hungry. Got it? Remember, these are tools that these parts do. If the tool is broken, it won't do them. So if the lateral is broken, what do you think happens? You're never hungry. You might starve to death. You never will feel prompted to eat. You can still eat, of course, but you just won't feel like it, right? That's the lateral hypothalamus. Got it? Awesome. Okay, in this picture, since we were talking about hunger, this is a picture of a rat, upper left-hand side. It's a morbidly obese rat, and it's showing you how if you destroy, right, the ventromedial hypothalamus, right, like you ate the pizza, remember, and you're full, you destroy that, a rat will eat and eat and eat until literally, it's incapacitated. That rat cannot survive in the wild. Clearly, he can't even support his own weight with his legs. So it's showing you that this is what they've done with testing. They've lesioned. A lesion is when you purposefully damage a part of the brain. And in this case, they've damaged the ventromedial hypothalamus. Okay, so let's get to the silly part. You have to know some appetite hormones, and yes, they're located in your textbook. Textbook, what's that? Page 334. And in the textbook, they talk about the appetite hormones. Well, I have them here, and I use a very silly mnemonic to remember them all because it's just sometimes you remember silly stuff. So the first one is insulin. Insulin is secreted by the pancreas, and it controls blood glucose level. Now, I don't have a, clever mnemonic for insulin, but I have a clever mnemonic for the rest, okay? I promise. But I know that you've heard of insulin, right? Insulin is what people need when they are diabetic. And so maybe you don't need a clever mnemonic for insulin. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Ready? Leptin is secreted by fat cells. Now, lipids are another way to say fat cells. So leptin and lipids sound the same, right? That's a fat cell. Think of liposuction, right? Lipo is when you suck out fat. That's a mnemonic. So to remember that leptin comes from the fat cells. And when there's a lot of them, it increases the metabolism and it decreases your hunger in theory. So leptin in theory is supposed to give you the signal, stop eating. Like you're not hungry anymore, just stop eating. That's leptin. Fat cells, lipids, think of lipo. Does that help? Yes? Okay. The next one is orexin. Orexin is a hunger triggering hormone, and that's coming from the brain. So you have to know that orexin comes from your brain, the hypothalamus, and it makes you hungry. So look at the word orexin. I don't know about you, but I see Oreos. So think of Oreos on the mind, Oreos in my brain. So think of Oreos in my brain making me eat. Orexin is triggered by the hypothalamus and it makes you eat. Okay, ghrelin. You might not know this 1980 something movie called Gremlins, but when I see ghrelin, I think of those gremlins, right? And I have a picture of them. You see them right there? Right there, gremlins. And think of gremlins. They were always very, very hungry. So this is secreted by your empty stomach and it sends a hunger signal to the brain. Like from your stomach, it says, I'm hungry. So gremlins, ghrelin, they're hungry. And where are they located? Your stomach. Good. Now, obistatin is actually secreted by your stomach. So when your stomach is full, right, when you've eaten a lot of food, it sends a signal to the brain to stop eating. And look at the word obistatin. It has the word obese in it, doesn't it? Like, stop eating. You're going to become obese. Stop eating. So obistatin is secreted by the stomach and it sends the full signal to your brain, like stop, stop, stop. Okay, good. All right, the last one is the silliest mnemonic of all. It's PYY. And I want you to think of the poo-poo highway, the Y for highway, and the P for poo-poo. And think of this is the PYY is a hormone that's secreted by the digestive tract, which means your intestines. If you look at the picture, right? The picture, it's your intestinal tract. When this is blocked up, with poo-poo, it actually sends a signal to your brain to stop eating. And so this is not a fun conversation to talk to people about, like constipation. But like when people are constipated and they haven't gone to the bathroom in a few days, that's not a good thing. It usually sends a signal to your brain, hey, stop eating. We're all blocked up down here. So I want you to think of PYY as the poo-poo highway. And when there's a lot of blockage down there, it's going to send a signal to your brain to stop eating. Okay? Yes? All right. And I told you they were silly. I warned you. But you know what? Silly works. You'll remember. Promise. Okay, so these are about the psychology of eating, and you have a couple of the vocab words are in black, underline, and bold print. Situation eating is you're eating more with others, so it's really typical. Like when we're at a party, even if we already ate before, we might just have a couple of things to eat. It's like social eating, and sometimes it's like culturally impolite to say no to food that's been offered at a party. That's called situation eating. Unit bias is about the ecology of eating. It has to do with our culture, portion sizes, plate sizes, even the size of our fridge, right? Our fridge, can be pretty big. But if you go to other countries, their refrigerators actually might be a little bit smaller compared to ours. At restaurants, when they serve you a meal, honestly, it's probably too much food. Like we don't really need that much food. But in our culture, sometimes like when we celebrate, we kind of overeat. And I know like in my culture, being, Latina, like my mom says, I'm just going to put out a couple of snacks, and like literally like the table is full of stuff to eat, and then you're expected to eat dinner, and then there's also dessert coming up next. So it's like way too much food. And culture, the way we celebrate holidays, a lot of that has to do with eating and what you eat and your comfort food. All that is psychology, really. All right, now you have to also know your eating disorders. You have anorexia, bulimia, and binge eating disorder. Get this straight. Anorexia, it's like self-starvation. You're about 15% below the normal weight rate. Half of them are binge eaters. I'll talk about that in a second. But anorexia is self-starvation. And I have some pictures above me of people that might appear to be anorexic. Their body fat is really it's below normal. Sometimes when people are anorexic, they develop like a fine layer of like hair on their bodies. It's because they don't have the fat to keep them warm, so their body is trying to kind of keep it warm by producing this little fine layer. But anorexia is self-starvation. Bulimia is purging. That means you're eating and then you're throwing up. The word purge in this case is throwing up. And then binge eating disorder, you're eating and eating and eating, and you're not necessarily throwing up. And this leads to things like obesity. And bulimia, believe it or not, people who are bulimic aren't necessarily underweight. A lot of them are average to slightly overweight. And about half of binge eaters are also anorexic. So the people that you might see statistically that are anorexic might also suffer from bulimia nervosa. Okay, and when we talk about abnormal psych, we'll mention these again. Okay, this is a quick kind of like little diagram about the psychology of hunger. You have genetics, social components, and you have a psychological component to eating disorders. And so I think this kind of explains itself. You might have an eating disorder because of genetics. It's been passed down from generation to generation. It could be a combination of all these three, actually. It could be social, maybe cultural pressures, body imaging issues, and the struggle to look a certain way that can contribute to an eating disorder. And then also the psychological ramifications behind an eating disorder might be, like body image pressures, like attaching your self-esteem to what you look like and your body. Your identity sometimes is kind of hinged on that. So those are three components behind the psychology of hunger. So here's it in a nutshell. Even though biologically we're driven to eat, there's a lot of psychology behind eating, determining what we eat, how much we eat, and when do we eat, with whom do we eat. So just remember that a lot of these things are physiologically based, but so much psychology is involved behind it. Okay, very quickly, your book does talk about the dangers of obesity, and it's right here in this quick little diagram about the dangers of obesity. It increases your likelihood for depression. It has higher and more severe social implication for girls, unfortunately. And, there's a lot of negative statistics about being in the obese category, especially in the morbidly obese category when you're 100 pounds or more overweight. And of course, it pays, it really, it's a great toll on your health, your physical health, but also it takes a great toll on your psychological health. Okay, in this part of the chapter, they do talk about sexual motivation, and they basically talk about it not being based on physiology alone or hormones or pheromones for that matter. It's very much psychology. Two words you have to know is estrogen and testosterone. Estrogen is the female sex hormone, peaks during ovulation, and testosterone is the male sex hormone. And it's loosely influenced on sexual behavior. And really, sexual behavior is more psychological than it ever has been physiological or even chemical or hormonal for that matter. And your book also talks about the psychology of sex. And my greatest recommendation, and it's actually kind of a funny video, it's up above in the very top. You can go to YouTube and watch Crash Course Sex. And they really do a great fast rundown on what you need to know, what the AP would ever ask about sex, and especially the psychology behind it. So watch that video. It's only 10 minutes of your time, and it's really, actually, it's kind of funny. They talk about the Kinsey Institute and some experiments that he performed. And honestly, if you're going to look at anything in advanced placement, they try to stay away from controversy. This might fall under that heading. So we're not going to dwell too much on there. But if you want to see more and really understand more, go to that crash course video that's right above. Okay, so if you watch the crash course video, you're going to see the Kinsey research, and it tells you all about that there. This, what you're looking at here, is the sexual response cycle, and there's a chart there. So look over that, and if you've seen the crash course, then you know what it's talking about. Okay, guys, so in this part of the chapter, it talks about what motivates us. And there's a couple of things that motivates us to do things. Number one, we're motivated to eat and to sleep and to behave in certain ways and make friends. Maybe because number one, we're here to survive. So number one is survival. Number two, you know why we do stuff? Sometimes we do it because we just want to be a part of a group. We want to fit in. We want to belong. It increases your self-esteem when you have friends, and that's a big reason why we conform, is to, to kind of like feel like you're a part of something. Number three is sustaining relationships, because you know what? Isolation hurts. Um, when we are bonding with others, when we are making friends, when we're corresponding with one another, it feels good. And that's why, for a lot of people, quarantine has been so difficult because you're isolated from your friends. But the good news is you have FaceTime, and you have Microsoft Teams, and you have Zoom, and you get Skype, and you can do all these cool technology things that you can get together with your friends. But I know there's nothing that replaces the camaraderie of like that human connection, being with people. So number three is sustaining relationships. And number four, guess what? Being excluded hurts. And that's called ostracism. Or when you ostracize someone, that means you don't allow them into whatever it is that you're doing. And this was a study done by Kipling Williams. And he studied this, and he basically studied what it feels like when someone kicks you out or ignores you when you're a part of a group or a team. And guess what? Under an MRI, your brain acts like you're getting pinched or hurt. Ostracism hurts, guys. Do not shut people out. That silent treatment, that's awful for someone. They feel physical pain. And think of this. It might not be too extreme, but think of, you look on your Snap and you see that everybody is somewhere and you weren't invited. You weren't given that text message invite to show up or to meet up. And these are people that you know. What happens at first, it's like it washes over you. It's pure pain. You feel so betrayed and you feel so excluded, and it hurts. Ostracism hurts. That was studied by Kipling Williams. And if you look at the YouTube video that I have, you can cut and paste it and look at his study. Kipling Williams did this, and it was a great, great study. Okay, this is the part of the chapter that might be cool and very confusing, so pay attention. This stuff is hard. We're going to be talking about emotion theories. Where do you get them? How do you get them? And can you read them? And we're going to do it all. So get ready. This is AP. Okay, just for fun, what emotion do you see here? Yeah, happy. The peanut butter sandwich says it all. Okay, so what emotion do you see here? Yes, sadness. How about here? Surprise. How about here? Disgust. And this one? Anger. Very good. Okay, so emotion theory number one. Here we go. The first emotion theory you have to know is the James Long theory. And James Long theory says It's a body-based theory. It says first your body reacts to something, an event, right? Then you have a physiological response and the motion happens afterwards. So here's what the slideshow is showing you right now. Let's say a breakup happens. Your body responds to the breakup by crying, therefore you're sad. It leaves something to be desired. Am I right? It does. Let's try this again. You're walking in a scary alleyway. That's the event. Your body responds by trembling, and then you feel fear. That's how James Long works. Feels weird? It should, because there's something missing, which we'll talk about that later. But it's body-based. Body, then emotion. Okay, so the first theory was James Long, right? They got together and they made the first emotion theory, and it was body based. Canon Bard got together as a result, and they made their own theory too. The Canon Bard theory of emotion is a neurologically based theory, and it basically says that emotion comes from our head. Here it is kind of in a more descriptive pattern. So an event happens and then your body responds and you feel emotion simultaneously. The word here, it's the key word is simultaneously. So that means, let's go back to the scary alleyway, right? Well, let's go back to the breakup, then we'll do the alleyway. A breakup happens, that's the stimulus perceived, and then your body responds and emotion occurs simultaneously, right? You might tremble. You might get an attack of the butterflies. That's the physiological response. And then you feel sadness simultaneously together at the same time. Does that make sense? Let's do the scary one. You're in a dark alleyway and you're scared and you're all by yourself. That's the event. That's the stimulus perceived. Then you tremble, right? And you're scared simultaneously. Remember, James Long said trembling happens first, emotion happens after. Not true. According to Canon Bard, it happens together. It's still missing something, right? Don't you feel that? I hope you feel that because it is missing something. All right, so one of the favorites is the Schachter 2-factor. And the second factor, the reason they call it 2-factor, it's thinking. This one, if you notice very carefully, this is like a copy of the James Long theory. They believe that the body is first. So let's do the breakup, right? The breakup is the event. And then your body can get like an attack of the butterflies, like you get that queasy feeling in your stomach. You might even start to tremble. And then you start to think, right? That's the reasoning part. That's the cognitive part. And you start thinking, oh no, it's over. I'm never going to see this person again. What did I do wrong? Self-blame, guilt, self-esteem issues, blah, blah, blah. All this thinking happens and it's negative. And then the emotion happens at the end. You feel sadness. Let's do the scary one. Ready? Let's do the walking in an alleyway. You're scared. That's the stimulus perceived. That's the event. Then your body is trembling. You might even have an attack of the butterflies too. And then you start to think, oh my gosh, I'm in a really terrible predicament. Nobody can hear me scream here. It's really dark. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. What am I doing here? This was a foolish, foolish decision. And then you feel scared at the end, right? Cognition happens before the emotion. That's the difference between Schachter 2-factor and the James Long theory. But do you see the similarities? They're both body-based. They both think that the body happens first. Then they have the Lazarus theory, which the Lazarus theory, if you look at it carefully, it looks so much like the Canon Bard theory, so much like the Canon Bard theory. Because look at it. An event happens. The only difference is you think first, but for the body and the emotion happens simultaneously. There's that simultaneously again, right? So the event happens, the breakup, and then you think to yourself, oh no, this is it. We're never going to see each other again. Ah, boo. And then the emotion and the body, you tremble, you have an attack of the butterflies, and you feel incredible sadness at the same time. Let's do the scary one. You're in an alleyway all by yourself, right? And then you think first and you go, I'm in danger. Nobody can hear me scream. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. What am I going to do? And then, right, the emotion and arousal happen simultaneously. You get an attack of the butterflies and you tremble and you're scared simultaneously. Now, if you're a fan of the Canon Bard, you will love the Lazarus theory because the only difference is cognition. If you're a fan of James Long, then you're going to love Shachter two-factor because the only difference is cognition. Do you get it? That's why it's called Shachter two-factor, because that second factor is cognition. So what were the first two missing? Thinking. And isn't thinking so important? Yes, it is. I'm not sure if you can see that video up there, but if you can't, don't worry about it. They talk about how Botox kills the nerves in the face, and could it be killing emotion? That's a great question. That brings us to the facial feedback theory, and here it is. Your face is going to make an expression like you're in a dark alleyway. Let's do the scary one. And then you go, oh, and your mouth opens up and your eyes widen really big and your eyebrows do that crazy arch. And you know what happens? Your face has muscles that are connected to nerves, and nerves send a signal to your brain, and it tells your brain you're feeling scared. Scared, scared, scared. And then your brain might feel scared. Have you ever heard of that expression, fake it until you make it? Write that down in your notes, fake it until you make it. Well, guess what? This is it. If you fake a smile for long enough, right? You smile, bring that smile up to your cheeks, bring it all the way up to your eyes. There's nerves up here. There's nerves over here. And if you smile and you keep that smile there, it actually might influence your actual feelings. You might actually start to feel happy, right? And the same thing goes for angry. You bring down those angry eyebrows and you got that frown going on. The nerves are telling your brain sad, sad, sad. And so therefore you might feel sad. Fake it until you make it, right? Words to live by. Okay, that's the facial feedback theory. Face comes first, emotion comes later. Okay, the spillover effect. Have you ever gone to a really awesome, like, adventure kind of movie, action packed? You leave that theater pumped and you're ready to do more. Like, you're like, let's go here. Let's keep going out. And I don't want to go home because the movie was so awesome and it really pumped you up. Do you know that the spillover effect talks about how things around you influences your feelings? If a movie can do that, you don't think people can do that? Yeah. So if you hang around a bunch of bummers, a bunch of people who are negative Nancy's and they're like boo hoo, blah, blah, you might feel blah, blah too because the emotion in the room is spilling over onto you. You hang around a bunch of peppy and upbeat and optimistic and positive thinkers. Guess what? It's going to spill over onto you. It's a great thing. The spillover effect is like catching the emotion of nearby people. And it could be angry, it could be something fearful, but it also could be happy. So don't forget spillover effect, and it could be a TV show, could be a movie, doesn't matter. The environment, it's like contagious, the feeling that's around you in the environment. Okay, these are microfacial expressions. It's just a really cool topic to talk about. You know, it flashes across your face so fast that you don't really perceive them sometimes. But when you're on video and you can stop it and you can see a facial expression, it really tells you a lot. I'm not sure if you can see this video above, but you can Google secrets to decoding facial expressions. And it's someone who works in the industry, and she kind of like helps you decode facial expressions by eyebrows, you know, eyes, mouth. Okay, this is Crash Course, feeling all the feels. And of course, it kind of goes over everything I just said. And here's our guy, Paul Ekman. He is one of the people that you have to know, one of the top 50 people in AP Psych that you have to know. And he did cross-cultural research on facial expressions. And he said there are universal facial expressions that anyone can recognize. You might not be able to speak my language. You might not be able to know my culture, but you'll know if I'm angry with you, if I'm sad, if I'm fearful, if I'm surprised, if I'm disgusted. These are universal facial expressions. So if you want to see more about it, there's an article right above my head. You can read about it. Okay, these are some other notable people. Now, Paul Ekman is right there, the last one, so I'm not going to repeat him because we just talked about him. But Charles Darwin said facial expressions have a purpose. That's to help us survive. How do moms read the facial expressions of their little babies and know what they need? Is this a cry of hunger? Is this a cry of attention? Right? Survival, number one. Carol Izard studied evolution and said that the facial expression of infants is something that we learn to read, we respond to it, and so, evolutionary speaking, it helps perpetuate the species. Ross Buck talked about the gender differences of women versus men, and he basically found through his studies that women are better readers at facial expressions than men. Are you surprised when I say that? I'm not surprised. We're better readers. And we also, here's what happens with women, we also expect that people read our expressions. We want people to know how it is that we feel. We want to walk into the room and we want our significant other to look at us and to know exactly how we feel at the moment. And totally not fair. Because honestly, not everyone's really good at that. And, you have to be clear. If you're upset, tell somebody you're upset, and tell them why. Don't just give them a look and expect them to know that you're upset and then to know why you're upset. That's asking a little too much. And girls, sometimes since we're good at reading facial expressions, we overread. And that's why we'll be like, are you mad? Are you mad? Just talk to me. Seriously, are you mad? Let's just talk about this. I could tell something's wrong. Just, what is it? What's wrong? Yeah. And so we do that all the time. And Ross Buck did a lot of research in that area. So there is kind of like a gender gap between the ability of reading emotions, and the portrayal of emotions. Also, culturally speaking, women are more encouraged to kind of like be emotional and talk about our emotions and express emotions, whereas men are more encouraged to stop that. Don't cry. Remember that old saying, big boys don't. Yeah. And you know what? We know that that's not true. Everyone deserves a time to like cry or vent or be angry. It should not be designated because of your gender. We all have similar feelings, and the way we produce the feelings and how we express them, it's very much individual. It's not so black and white as female and male? Okay, in your notes, I want you to write down Yerkes-Dodson law, and it's about arousal and performance. Remember when they say arousal, it means stimuli, right? So if you need high arousal to perform well, you're one of those people that you cram study, you do everything at the last minute, and you pull it out. You guys are great for like firefighters and police officers where you can handle the stress. There's some people that need lower levels of arousal. They don't want all that stress. But here's what Yerkes-Dodson's law says. Everyone needs optimal levels of arousal, and it's somewhere in the moderate range. It's somewhere in the middle. Too high, you might fold because you're nervous. Too low, you won't do anything because you're bored. Optimal levels of arousal is usually somewhere in the middle, according to the Yerkes-Dodson law. Okay, in this part of the chapter, they talk about stress. Stress, a word that you know so much about. Am I right? Now, if you type in a Word document stressor, it actually highlights it as misspelled every single time. But in psychology, a stressor is any event that causes strain, poses a challenge. Do you know that some good things could be very stressful, even though they're good? Like getting married. Getting married is good, but oh my gosh, a huge stressor. Having a baby, it's wonderful. Yay, it's beautiful. But guess what? A lot of stress. And even like an event like, okay, guys, I'm going to hit home here. Going to college, right? Going to college a year from now, applying for college. Doesn't that stress you out? But isn't it a happy thought going away to college and starting this wonderful new chapter of your life? Stressors can be both positive and negative. Getting a new job is wonderful. Congratulations, you got a new job at the same time could pose a stress on the body. Well, there's different kinds of stress. There's transient stressors and chronic stressors. Transient stressors, also known as acute stress, these are temporary challenges. Believe it or not, as hard as they are, divorce, a death in the family, natural disasters, these things are transient stressors. They're really hard on the body. They're hard on the individual, both psychologically and even physiologically. But you know what? They pass. The silent killer Put a star next to chronic. Put a skull and crossbones next to chronic, because chronic stressors have a negative impact on health. This is the daily grind, the daily hassles. And I'll give you some examples. Working in a job that you hate, right? Year after year, 20 years later, right? Year after year, you can't leave your job because you got to pay the bills, but you're there because you have to be and you totally hate it. That's a chronic stressor. Living in an abusive relationship year after year, that's a chronic stressor. That actually poses greater health hazards with hypertension, high blood pressure, chronic um, heart disease. That's why they call it the silent killer. This is the chronic stress that doctors warn you about. Bad things happen all the time, and we have highs and lows in our lives. We have, times where things are great and going really well, then other times where it's really rough and a bunch of bad things happen. But this too shall pass. And the transient stressor, although very hurtful, does pass. It's the one that never goes away, year after year, year after year, and that's the one that gets you physically and psychologically. I don't know if you can see this video up here, but you can Google teens with possible conversion disorder. Could it be a stress reaction? Google it. There were 12 teens in New York that actually started having tics as a result of, they believe it's stress. So go check that out. That's conversion disorder, when you convert a psychological problem into a physiological problem, and it manifests itself in different ways. And we'll be talking about that in a second. All right, also crash course. Go to YouTube and Google crash course emotions, stress, and health. And in 10 minutes, he will cover everything I just said faster and probably a lot more funnier than I do. Okay, and there is no surprise that stress has a lot of negative factors on your body. And here's a quick little diagram of that. Cool, right? So now that we're talking about stress, I thought it would be fun to be chilling with some nice pictures that are relaxing in between. So take a deep breath, let it out. Very nice. Let's continue. We're going to be talking about stress, but also trying to relax at the same time. Feeling relaxed already? Stop lying. I know you're not relaxed. Okay, Hans Selye. He did the general adaptation syndrome, alarm phase, resistance phase, and then the dreaded exhaustion phase. He says when we go into stress, these are our three phases. It happens to humans and it happens to animals. Humans get sick, animals die. The alarm phase, the body gets the resources to meet the threat. It gives you everything that you need. For humans, it's going to pump cortisol, all these hormones, adrenaline your way, whatever it is that you need to meet the stressor. Then number two, the resistance phase, your body does better. It actually adjusts to the stress, which is not a good thing, really. And you look normal and everyone's looking at you like, hey, you're doing great at this new job. You're really doing well. You're killing it. And you're like, yeah, thanks, with a big smile on your face, but inside you're dying. Okay, that's the resistance phase. And if you're too long in that phase, you reach number three, the dreaded exhaustion phase. And the exhaustion phase is when your adrenaline is pumping hard. You have elevated salt levels. You have potential for kidney damage. And cortisol is being pumped through your body. And under these conditions, we get sick. Have you noticed in college, it's not even flu season when people go to the clinic? You know when it's more common? Midterms and finals week. That's when the clinics in college get jam-packed with snotty, coughing kids. And it's usually because they're doing all kinds of stuff to get ready for testing. They're neglecting their health. They're not eating right. They're not sleeping. Their immune system bails, and then they get sick. And that's the result of stress. So think of stress as one of those things that aren't necessarily good for you, but remember, cognitive powers, you could change that stressor and you can make it a positive. So the next time you get nervous taking a test, you know what you can say to yourself? All right, adrenaline, come on, let it come. Let's go, adrenaline. We're going to kick this stressor. We're going to rock this test. I'm going to use my little butterflies in my stomach, my adrenaline to do well on the test. And this is my body's way of meeting the stressor, and I'm going to attack it head on, and I'm going to be successful on the test. You guys, coach yourself. Coach yourself the way you talk to yourself. If you're scared of taking tests and you enter in that stress phase, you guys could reconfigure it, paradigm shift your mind, and start thinking in terms of the positive. This adrenaline, these butterflies is going to give me an edge, and I am going to do so well on this test. Try it. Can't hurt. Deep breath in, breathe out. Deep breath in and out. Does it look like I do yoga? I totally don't. I don't have the attention span for it, but we're breathing. Breathing is something I can do. And here's a nice relaxing picture. All right, to continue talking about stress, how it makes you sick. Okay, so there's something called psychosomatic illness, and that means it's a mind-body connection. You are so nervous, it's making you sick physically. You're nervous here, making you physically ill here. And have you ever heard that depressed people get more sick than people who are not clinically depressed? Yeah, it's a thing. Why? Because your immune system bails on you. And then you catch every bacteria, you catch every little virus that's floating around, every little germ gets in there, and your body can't fight it because your immunity is down. Psychosomatic illness could stem at least in part from mental and emotional causes, especially if you already have like a nervous condition like anxiety. Now, psychoneuroimmunology, or PNI for short, studies how all these things affect our immunity, our immune system, our ability to fight off diseases. Some classic psychosomatic illnesses is high blood pressure, ulcers, asthma. You know what I get? I'll just tell you right now, I get hives. When I get really nervous, I get hives. It's crazy. But like my face will break out in hives, and it looks like I'm having an allergic reaction, and it itches. Like you really see the welts, like I'm having a peanut allergy or something crazy. But yeah, I get hives. And it's completely psychosomatic. I'm very, very nervous. I have to do something I've never done before, and then I'll start feeling itchy, and I'll get one or two hives on my cheek, on my shoulder, on my back. I don't know. It just happens. That's a psychosomatic illness. Have you ever been so nervous that you get nauseous and you can't eat because you're so nervous? Psychosomatic, right. Have you ever been so upset that you get a bad headache, or you feel nauseous again, or it goes right to your stomach, or you can't eat because you're too upset? Psychosomatic, right? It's in your mind shouldn't affect your stomach, but it does. Psychosomatic is really real, so don't discount it. Oh, I left one out. The headaches and the weakness and the fatigue. These could all be psychological. And it doesn't make it any less real. It's really real. So don't discount it. And you shouldn't discount it when other people are talking about it, because it's really real for them. And breathe in and out. I want to be there, wherever that is. I know that's not Florida. That's beautiful. Okay, are you a type A or type B personality? Have you ever heard of this before? Okay, listen, we're not going to talk bad about either one. They're both, they have their good and bad things. Type A, those are go-getters, and type B, you're more easygoing and relaxed. Most people, you know where they are? Smack in the middle. Most people are smack. You might be leaning towards one, type B, or leaning towards another one, type A, but most people are somewhere in the middle. Oh, this isn't relaxing, but our baby's cute. Look at those cheeks. All right, let's talk about type A and type B. Now, there's a lot more written about type A, am I right? Type A, you guys are go-getters. You want to be the leaders of everything and do 1,000 things. And, it's great to be hard-driven and successful, and you're ambitious. But sometimes you're a little bit impatient and competitive. You have an urgency to get things done. If you're a type A person, you hate group projects, don't you? Yeah, because everybody else that you're working with, they're idiots and I know better. You want it done your way or no way, right? It's either my way or the highway. Sometimes type A's, even though you guys run the world and you start businesses and you're innovators and you're creative and really, seriously, we need you. Um, Type A's could have a little negative twist to it where they could be more competitive, but they might not like criticism either. It could be tough. It could be really tough. And you're more prone to heart disease because you do some risky stuff like you smoke, you sleep less, you might be drinking a little bit too much caffeine. You don't like when people criticize you. That's called TAPB, type A behavior pattern. Now, type B is easygoing. They place less value on like success and they have less propensity for coronary heart disease and high blood pressure. And isn't this a beautiful picture? We're relaxing while we're talking about stress. All right, stress and mental disorders. There's something called the diathesis stress hypothesis that says even really serious mental disorders like schizophrenia, they have that stress component where, like, all you need is that one stressful episode for it to be unleashed. So stress generally isn't a good thing, especially when you're compounding it with a mental illness. Stress affects even like diseases like AIDS and cancer. High stress level makes it harder for your body to fight. And you need your immune system to help you out here. So it's not good to allow stress in your life too much. And especially if you are, in a place where you're fighting cancer or other diseases. If you want to know more how stress can damage your health, see that video right next to me. It's by the doctors. It's like a show called The Doctors. It's 5 minutes. And it's really interesting about how stress could damage your health. Oh, that's not relaxing, but I found it funny. It's kind of relaxing. I don't know why. If cows could do that, that'd be cool. We're almost done. Here we are. So we've been talking about stress this whole time. And you know what you could do? Think of this. These are called coping strategies. Are you stressed out? Number one recommendation, go out and exercise. Breathe, like get some oxygen in your body. Do a nice brisk walk for 20 minutes or go work out at the gym. Number one, number one, number one. Number two is maybe engage in some yoga or biofeedback or relaxation or some breathing techniques or listening to music or whatever it is that you do to relax. Number three are your friends. You want to de-stress? Hang out with some of your favorite people. Go to the movies, have some ice cream, like do something fun with them, and that's a great way to de-stress. And you know what? What's your catharsis? There's a fancy word for you. Catharsis is something that relieves your stress. I'm trying to think of what mine is. What's yours? Is it playing video games for 8 hours? Because that could be cathartic for some people. Um, and also think of like what activities do you do that might feel like they're cathartic activities. Some people, like I said, exercise. Exercise does not like de-stress me. I wish it did, but it just doesn't. I guess like for me it's like watching or binge watching a show. I just kind of leave reality and I'm really into this show. And that for me is very cathartic. Sitting on my couch in my PJs with my dog watching, I don't know, like one of my favorite series, something like that. That could be cathartic for people. Now, something else that you could do is a feel good do good phenomenon. And here's a great idea for you if your birthday is coming up. There's a girl who is turning 20 and she decides to perform 20 random acts of kindness for her community. So that's the way she celebrates her birthday. Doing for others is also a great way to de-stress and feel good. It does. It just feels good. All right, so if you want to go there, go to the YouTube and put in girl performs 20 random acts of kindness for her birthday. If you put that in, it should be one of the first things that come up. All right, guys.